Let's take a look at some photography news and links here set up. I'm going to try to add some more eventually, but this is what I've got. DP Review is back in action thanks to Gear Patrol, as probably everyone in the photography world knows at this point. This is cool. L-Mount adds additional companies to their list. Samyang and Astrodesign. L-Mount has gotten very interesting to me. The S5 II and S5 IIX cameras. They added phase detect, a sizable camera. It's full frame, like physically sizable for what it is, but you're getting a good video camera. Obviously it does photo as well as the full viewfinder. The specific one has additional video features compared to the non-X version. See the price here. That's considering what it does, it's a pretty reasonable price. The non-X version is $200 cheaper, but with this, I would probably go with this one because it looks cooler, doesn't have the flashy colors on it, but in addition, it also has streaming from the camera, additional types and formats of output through the HDMI, which is nice, and I think a few other additional things. Oh, this is not an ideal placement of the Q20. It's aligned with the lens, but it's just really far forward. Anyways, I don't have the funds to get into this, but this is definitely a system I would like to get into if I could at some point, especially for this specific camera and most likely future cameras. It's just got a lot of great video features, 2 SD card slots, and I would very much assume that Panasonic allows you to do backup recording style stuff with video for those 2 card slots. And of course you can do HDMI output, record to that, and also I would assume do internal recording at the same time. But that really depends on the camera. This M6 Mark II does not do internal recording while it's outputting HDMI. You know, it's 24 megapixel. That's more than enough for photos in my opinion. And this is gonna run for long periods of time without issue. This specific model has fan input output, so it's thermally impressive from dealing a video perspective. Whatever I just said. Try to decipher that. It's nice to see additional companies getting into L-Mount. Samyang has been around for quite a while now. They Korean company. I'm not sure if I've ever specifically used any of their stuff, but I've seen it around a lot. They're also, at least in the United States, Ricoh is their kind of sister company. So very nice to see them officially join L-Mount. They have been into autofocus lenses for a good amount of time now. I don't know anything about Astrodesign. So it looks like maybe they're going to be making more so the cameras rather than lenses. I think in this situation, it's going to be, if you don't know price, it's going to be expensive. Anyways, it's nice to see additional companies joining L-Mount. Hopefully they keep expanding. I like the idea of having a cooperative of different companies that officially work together, because in the past, not so much now, because some companies just don't bother making lenses for Canon or whatever. That might change, but there are more official cooperatives happening, because at least in the past, there were a lot of technical issues where they tried to reverse engineer a mount system, and then you get a pretty functional lens, but if you ever upgrade your camera, it might just not work. The Sony FE 70-200mm f4 OSS 2 that was announced with the 6700. I'm not going to bother looking at that, but it's not cheap for f4. Lenses are just getting more expensive, so $1,700. Panasonic GH6 firmware updates. So the GH line is the Micro Four Thirds video focus camera. A ton of people were very, very much into that line of cameras. Probably still are. Never had a strong desire to, considering the autofocus. In my case, I do a lot of solo video stuff. Having good video autofocus, not to say that it was terrible, but just not on the level of other stuff I've used. They're updating it, which is nice. We'll hopefully see phase detect in the Micro Four Thirds Panasonic stuff eventually, but who knows. Sony ZV-1 Mark II is a photographer's compact. If you're not familiar, the ZV-1 Mark II is a good and kind of strange upgrade, if you want to call it an upgrade, to the original ZV-1. They did add a wider lens to it, but then they removed the optical stabilization so that you're basically forced to use digital stabilization in a lot of situations. It's kind of a weird side upgrade. Also, if you are ever using this camera for video, you basically have to set the thermal threshold setting to high if you want to get any serious use out of it. It's a small camera. Sony, a lot of the time, is making these cameras that are very compact, but then video focused. And it's a weird confrontational mix of small size of camera, yet trying to do a lot of video stuff, and heat builds up and they just have issues with that. I'm not sure why they do this. It's just not going to be a great experience. So it looks like they're trying to use this camera as a photography camera. So it's got the 18-50 equivalent lens. They did widen the lens, but it removed the optical stabilization. Regarding that, there aren't a ton of viable options. If you want to do IRL streaming with a backpack, use a camera that puts out HDMI and can also be charged through USB, maybe. I guess you could do a DC coupler power setup as well on some cameras, but then that adds more stuff and more potential issues. Yeah, not great situation if you're trying to do that backpack IRL stuff. It's hard to say which cameras would even work in that situation. I'll look over a few cameras on B&H or something. Got the GoPro 9. This is the one that I have. If you get this with the media mod, I mean, you should just get a newer version most likely, but the media mod offers HDMI out and USB output. So that's a potential option. I'm just not sure thermally, depending on where you live and such, if you're going to have issues doing that. Maybe I'll try it at some point. That said, I have used the GoPro 9 recording on a POV style for long periods of time. Haven't had an issue with it since the firmware updates. There were rare occasions, but I'm not sure with the current firmware. And I would assume the newer GoPros are better, but you never know with GoPro. They sometimes degrade in certain features. So for example, the 11, it's got the same case size. You'd probably be better off getting the 11 and then get the media mod, output the HDMI, try to input battery power into it. That might work. Thing is, you're not going to get optical image quality. You're going to get a lot of distortion potentially depending on which setting you use. Probably want to use a linear mode, but then you're not going to get as wide of a field of view. Even although I think it would just be better generally than the Sony ZV-1 with stabilization. Again, this is the original ZV-1 I think there's the F2. This has bad autofocus. Okay, it's a 24 instead of 18. So I think in general, even in linear modes, you're going to see more, but you won't get autofocus with this type of camera. So if you're going to try to focus close to something, it's not going to be as detailed. So that's $80 for this thing. I got mine open box, I think, through Best Buy, and it's worked fine for the most part. One issue potentially with the media mod is it increases the heat in the device. So it's basically a plastic covering for it. So there are potential heat issues with it on. Kind of counterintuitive, but that's how it is. Oh yeah, so this is with the GoPro. It looks pretty rough. I just have two basic lights running, and the GoPro is in 1080p 60 frames a second. Currently charging the camera and outputting HDMI. There is a way to go into the buttons here. You can scroll through. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. So you press the side button and it cycles through different options. I can cycle through as a 1080p 30 linear. That looks much, much better. Okay, that's cool. Currently do not have a battery in the GoPro, and that would be most likely good from a thermal standpoint, is to not have this in there. Wow, it didn't adjust itself. That's 50% power on my large softbox type studio light. All right, this is looking pretty good. I have it to 1080p 60 frames a second. And you can still cycle through those modes if you want. You could potentially record in the camera while doing HDMI out. And it does look like the stabilization still works. Currently have it set to 1080p 60 frames a second, -1 EV compensation, automatic ISO, automatic shutter, and a good amount of light, clearly. But I think the -1 EV compensation is helping. It's possible the GoPro 10 or 11 would have better auto exposure and such. I don't have those. This is the 9 with the media mod, HDMI out. Yeah, there aren't a ton of options though. Getting clean HDMI out in a smaller camera that doesn't overheat, it's hard to think of ones that are like that. There's an issue with reviews versus pushing the camera in real life situations. There are a few, Potato Chat on YouTube, which I don't think he's been posting that much. He did testing where you put it into this heating device and he would test the cameras to see how long they last. But he doesn't do like every single option. I don't think he's ever done any type of HDMI-out testing inside that thing. It's not super realistic to do it inside of an enclosed thing, but yeah. Gerald Undone, I think, has done... Gerald Undone has tests where he does do longer recordings, gives you the information, like how long it lasted. But again, depends on which type of test he does. But offhand, I can't think of many cameras specifically for that use case where you're doing HDMI output and then also powering the camera through USB at the same time. Photo Video News, Petapixel, they're the ones that picked up these guys for the video side. So they still have a job. Let's see, Abstract State of Mind, seeing beyond the literal in landscape photos. So we've got some actual photography articles, which is nice. If social media didn't exist, how would you share your photography? I assume prints. Go into convention type things, I would assume. Doing mail order print books and stuff. Yeah, I'm not going to bother reading that, but nice hypothetical situation, I guess. Fujifilm is releasing ultra rare limited edition Disney X100V camera. Wooden box and accessories. 100 units. Only available in Hong Kong. I mean, it's fine, it's cool, whatever. Pentax used to do this a lot as like unique versions. $2,000. Threads engagement has already dropped off. Wow, shocking. It's very limited in feature set. All you do is go on there and it shows you random stuff. That's a big camera that happens to have a phone attached. It kind of makes sense if you're into posting on social media or something. Get something like this and have some good camera possibilities plus direct ability to edit and post. I don't think I would justify however much this costs to get this. Ergonomics of phones just is not great, even though this looks okay right here. It's got a little zoom rocker thing. I assume that's a shutter as well. Here's a good topic. Stability. AI boss admits to using billions of images without consent. This is a serious issue with the current, if you even want to call them AI, the diffusion type systems that are basically taking a ton of work that people made and scrunching it up, mixing it together, taking a few prompts and seed numbers, making images that look all glossy and fake, and people are acting like it's real new art or new photos and stuff. Midjourney using troves of copyrighted work without consent. I see potential and usefulness for AI systems and such, but the way they're going about it is just screwing people over in any type of artistic field. Not surprised. This is how people work a lot of the time. The selfishness of humanity could potentially set up a group of people willing to submit work to AI training systems and then basically pay out continuously as they're used to those original creators. In my opinion, I think that would be a reasonable option. I think there are situations and reasons and ways to go about using other work, but the AI systems are not, in my opinion, doing a transformative human-like action. Not to say that all humans do it in a good way. They don't. Some humans will take work and basically copy it, try to make it their own. That's wrong. But the ones that actually source things and take inspiration, that's good. Why are new camera models so like the old ones? Showing a D7000 from Nikon. I had this camera. It was pretty nice for what it is, but it did have a bunch of little features here and there that just aren't as good as current stuff. This time of the year, gearhead photographers are looking at the news for new camera and lens announcements. The comments I've seen so far bemoan the scarcity of them, while forum pages and rumor sites abound with hypothetical new models. Quite easy to spot when such a list is speculative, as the method of reaching each specification depends on one or two methods. They're commenting on rumor sites, which I do look at, but I don't really talk about. Where the new camera model is so similar to the older ones in this person's opinion. Part takes time, effort, and investment to develop. I agree with that. So even like a little button, the shell of the camera, you have to manufacture it. So it makes sense that they reuse pieces. If no parts are carried over, the overall cost of development of new models would be prohibitive. Instead, ground up redesigns happen very rarely. I agree with this. Look at various manufacturers' model ranges. It's clear that they work in what I'd call platforms. Yeah, similar to the automotive industry. I agree with that. They do evolve over time, but it's like smaller revisionary things. There's a thing in Japanese called Kaizen, continuous improvement. I think that is also a consideration when they do camera production. They use that Kaizen method. Adjust, tweak things here and there for the next model, add a few additional features, building on each successive model. Sometimes they devolve, which is a thing. The general goal is to improve over time. The lifespan of an individual platform might be quite extended. D7000 platform, which was introduced in 2010, continued into the D7500. Yep. Oh, they're saying it branched into the full frame version, which is still the D780. Kind of, sort of, yes. Has similar design and stuff, but it doesn't mean they're using the same parts. Yeah, not a bad article. That's pretty good. I agree with them. The GR is not the only one. Fuji X70 re-review. That's a pretty old, slow camera. I agree, but it's got to be pretty rough. It's kind of disappointing Fujifilm didn't iterate on this. Let me see what their general opinion is. X70, still a brilliant camera in 2023. Due to its small size, low weight, wonderful image quality, silent shutter, perfect everyday camera. Many of us are still quietly dreaming of Fujifilm reviving this line. Yeah, I think they should. Needs a newer AF system, larger battery. I do wish there were more options in that type of small, larger sensor camera. I do want a GR, but it's hard for me to justify the cost these days. But it's on my list of potential. I've been trying to wait with the hope that Ricoh will add weather resistance to that lineup. It's challenging because it uses a lens setup that extends from the body. K-3 Mark III Monochrome review in this case. It's cool that they're trying new stuff. So they put an actual monochrome center in their K3 body. The Leica monochrome was pretty appealing to me. That camera, and this too is interesting. I wouldn't go out of my way to buy one at this point, but I like the idea of it, having the option to have a straight monochrome camera. Do they give any opinion here? If you can't afford a Leica, strongest reason I can think of to get this camera, getting all the benefits of the monochrome sensor without the added red dot cost. Yeah, I patiently hope this is just a test. Oh, and put it in the GR. Yeah, that would actually make more sense in my opinion as well. Not just disliked, but I felt downright annoyed. Autofocus has many missed. Okay, the bad autofocus apparently. Is the K3 that bad in autofocus? Speed of the camera as well. Just felt like I was transported back at least a decade, but without all the nostalgia of the first Avengers movie. Had a fair share of issues with this camera. I was looking forward to returning it, pick up a Q3 for review. Going back to one of his Fuji films. Ouch. That's rough. I haven't used a Pentax in a long time. I do remember them being difficult with autofocus, but I would have thought by now their DSLR style autofocus would have been up to the highest levels of that technology. Maybe not. It's kind of sad if that's the case. Yeah, hopefully they put in a GR style camera. Let's see what Ricoh is up to. I'll end on Ricoh here. They've got a firmware update for the WG6, which is a waterproof camera, I think. When was this? I don't see even a date. So they're doing firmware updates. That's cool. Okay, I think that's good.